is a chance you can do something amazing to feel your passion blazing and shine.
Paint with every vision, dance in new directions, explode to new heights in your mind.
I will rise up with you today. Lift up my voice and boldly say, we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to AGNT Speaks, where each week we come to you live with a mindful message or a spiritual practice. So thank you for joining us today. If you want to let other people know about this experience, you can just share this event link and they can easily register to hop into the Zoom room to get up close and personal, to roll around some questions after this conversation, or you can just share this link to the live stream and we post them later on YouTube. So thank you for being here with us today. I am Reverend Erin McCabe and I am your rep from our AGNT Leadership Council. The Association for Global New Thought is committed to creating a world that works for all and having conscious conversations that inspire action towards that vision. So I am just delighted today. We have a special friend of AGNT with us here today. His name is Stephen Pope. He is the author of Reflections on Love and Truth. He is a leader of the Quaker community in Santa Barbara. And so, Stephen, I just want to give you a warm welcome and thank you for being here with us today. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, a little bit more about the path and anything you have to share with us.
Well, thank you, Erin and Barbara. The first thing I want to say is I'm a total fan of this podcast. I don't think I've missed, well, I've missed at least one.
Oh,
but the diversity of opinion, and some people, well, just the diversity is refreshing, and I guess also the brevity. So that's a nice mix in today's world.
right.
So
You get a little nugget for your week.
I'll try to provide some of each of those. As Erin said, I've been an active Quaker for most of my life. Quaker is a weird term. We call ourselves Friends, so it's the Religious Society of Friends. And the briefest description of what we are is it was a conscious decision, a conscious effort starting in the 1640s to recreate the Church of the Apostles. So it was about rediscovering the simplest church and the most direct church, but also the most empowered church, so the church of equals. So to call me a leader is almost an anathema or an oxymoron because we don't have leaders.
Right.
Within the community, I'm called clerk, which is literally just, it means I sign the checks. Basically, I'm not the only one who speaks or even the one who speaks the most. What I was hoping to do today was just to read two short reflections from a book called Reflections on Love and Truth. That's available on your e-reader, but the idea today was to take two of the thoughts that kind of related to the Season for Nonviolence topic of equality and what we in the Quaker community have been studying a lot since the Black Lives Matter movement, talking about microaggressions and how we see each other. And it'll almost be a test about how do these readings relate to the topic. So it's not direct, but they're two short readings on Quaker thought that relate, I hope. And Barbara, would you allow me to share my screen so that I can, I don't think I can do it myself. Oh, oh, look at that. So the idea was to share that. And so the book, Reflections on Love and Truth, consists of 52 short readings, each of which is accompanied by images from the same three artists. So this image is from an Austrian artist who's a dear old friend of mine called Drago Druszkowicz. And the reading for this is as follows. It's called The Lighthouse and the Lantern. It would be quite comforting to assume the spirit is constant and unchanging, to expect our higher goals and the path to them to be known and well marked, and to assume that we simply have to follow a single teaching, like taking a straight route in our lives. The analogy I'd like to propose here, however, is that of the lighthouse and the lantern. We all know that a lighthouse is only useful because it is fixed and well known. It is very bright and visible over a large area. It helps mariners over a specific part of their journey, a short path of their journey. Normally, something where the path has known risks that have been marked by previous travelers. In contrast, a lantern is personal and small. It only illuminates the local domain, but it moves with you and is crucial to anyone who is trying to follow an unmarked or vaguely known path in the dark. In the journey that each of us is charged with making through this life plane, one of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's spirit beings having a human experience, if you will, would you guess that we are expected to follow a common and well-marked trade route, staying near the coastlines? Is there any reason to assume that our spiritual contracts, to use the nomenclature of Carolyn Mace, would be composed of pages of standard repetitive boilerplate text? I would certainly think and hope not. Every instinct I have and every wise teacher I find relates that we are directed to follow the road less traveled and to be ready to change course at frequent intervals. This is why listening and discernment are so central to Quaker practice. This is why we concentrate on the small lantern of the light within each of us that travels around with us, instead of looking for a fixed lighthouse of standard teachings to apply to everyone. This is why Quakers have practices such as spiritual friendship, and why we publish thin pamphlets and simple devotional books like the one you're reading right now. These are just a few of the processes by which we share that small measure of the light that we each are able to see clearly. We hope to illuminate our paths and to share our personal measures of the light with those neighbors we meet along the way. As Thomas Merton put it, you don't need to know precisely what is happening or exactly where it is all going. What you need is to recognize the possibilities and challenges offered by the present moment and to embrace them with courage, faith, and hope. Amen, Thomas.
That is a powerful reading. I can see in that reading even the new thought path and the unity path, the path that AGNT embraces in that desire to go within and that desire to go kind of directly to headquarters or universe or love or God consciousness, whatever you want to call it, and to allow our own practice to support others as far as the illumination and the light, but not to direct, tell, create rules around. I think there's a real discomfort sometimes within humanity that it's not simpler, that there's not a guidebook. Like you said in the reading, that it's not always straightforward. Sometimes, you know, we're moving through the darkness and we're finding our way. And I think the human condition is one that has sometimes discomfort with that, with being with the self and being with the light within, rather than taking instruction. There is a tendency to want to take instruction. If you say you have information, if you say you know how to make this choice, if you say you know what this is, I will come with you.
It's absolutely much easier to follow the road well-traveled, yes, and to have a standard book and to say this book, you know, I inherited from my grandmother and it's still the book.
Right.
Yeah.
It has the answers. These are the answers. This is the way. But it really does deepen the practice, doesn't it? When we have to dive deep, we have to dig within to find our internal compass that we're all built with, that is within each one of us.
It's also, to bring it back to the topic of Seasons for Nonviolence, having a standard teaching doesn't help you moment by moment if you haven't really deeply internalized it. And so to change your own behavior, you have to constantly be monitoring your own behavior, listening to the way people respond to you. And that's, for example, about this topic of microaggression and treating other people as equals. That's the only way we can change. We can't just keep focusing on, here's the Old Testament, or
Right.
here's the New Testament, or here's a teaching, a recent book. It's about discerning at each and every moment. Am I being driven by what I want to be driven by? Am I following my lantern, my little lantern that I have with me?
Yeah. Yeah. Because otherwise we're trying to fit ourselves into the doctrine that we have declared as true or has been given to us under the assumption that it is true, or it is the way, or it is the only way. And then we can have a tendency to both mistreat ourselves and others in that we kind of try to force it upon them. Here, this is the way, this is what you need to do. And then we try to force ourselves into that structure, that framework, that teaching, that box, and try to find ourselves from within it, rather than unfolding it, uncovering it, discovering it, and allowing it to emerge from within us, allowing that guidance, that illumination, that path to emerge from within us. And then sometimes looking outside to see where else is this resonating? Who else? Where's the community that is practicing who and what I am? A community that is practicing what I have found to be my path, or the highest that I can understand or practice at this moment of consciousness.
Well, and Barbara also just mentioned that we have to change with the evolution of the times. And so fixed teachings, and especially just the last few weeks, the last year and couple of years, we've had the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. And just the last 48 hours, we have a new awareness. What stereotypes that are incorrect and impolite and insulting of Asians have we been promulgating, and where do we have to change? And so it's almost lucky to say, I'm in a moment of this awakening, and we could come out of this with a much more just society, and a society that doesn't have racial and social stereotypes that are demeaning to people that live among us as peers. But it also means we have to keep discerning moment by moment what's the right thing to do. Is what I'm doing disrespectful and thereby insulting and unjust to somebody who is my neighbor?
That's right. That's right. And it's always when we get out of the structures and we learn deep listening, like on your path, the Quaker path, and in unity, meditation and prayer and new thought, that consciousness of becoming quiet, becoming still, allowing ourselves to let go of everything that we're educated to think as far as our spiritual practice, everything that we inherited as far as our spiritual practice. And we're willing to just go directly to the silence. And that can be scary. But when we do that, I do think we deepen our ability to listen. We deepen our ability to learn. We deepen our ability to be open. We deepen our ability to communicate. And what you're talking about is the outward expression. So that's the inner path. But on the outer, that's what that looks like when we're dealing with the issues that are coming up today. Are we able to listen to each other culturally, as a community, as a nation, as a world? Are we communicating? Are we receiving each other? Are our hearts open? And are we able to transform and change and shift? And that is that's kind of like the spiritual practice on the inside is about this body temple, this body being, this spiritual self. But on the outside, it's the same practice, but with the community of light that is around us. Every individual, every creature of the earth, every element of this expression of God that we call creation.
Well, since I can't possibly improve on that, I'd like to move on to the second reading.
That sounds great.
This is a little bit tongue-in-cheek and a little bit seriously related to the topic. So I hope you'll bear with me. I'm going to share another image. This is an image called Waves, and it's by Steve Fields, who happens to be Barbara's brother, who is a pretty accomplished artist. And the reading is called, But Wait, Some of This Is Real. And for those who don't remember it, that's a quote from Firesign Theater. So for everybody over 60 in the crowd, maybe. I was a teenager in the early 1970s and remember both the Jesus freak movement and the rising popularity of Eastern religion in the US. In the wake of the release of Jesus Christ Superstar, I attended several events intended to evangelize youth. It always saddened me that my hosts were insulted when I said that as a Quaker, I deeply loved the teachings of Jesus, but that I didn't believe in original sin or the necessity or possibility of salvation through belief. Around that time, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism became part of the canon of seeking youth, and each of them in turn helped me to see certain things more clearly. When confronted by friends who had developed an infatuation for Hinduism or Buddhism, and who compared the most advanced esoteric mystical teachings of the East to their shallow childhood experience of Christianity, there was always friction between this and my belief that the physical world is indeed real, but that what happens here matters, even if there is certainly also a parallel spirit world. The Eastern concepts of Maya and samsara troubled me because they tend to distract us from concentrating on what we can do to alleviate suffering in this world, and from deeply enjoying the beauty of nature and other people. This plane of existence is real, and it's so full of wonder that spirit beings wait in line for a chance to smell flowers and hear singing and be tickled and experience both love and grief. As Quakers experience in a gathered meeting, which is a Quaker term of art, there's more here than meets the eye. As a culture, we have a history that obeys Arthur C. Clarke's third law of prediction, which states, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. My two favorite examples of this are electromagnetism and X-rays, both of which were considered occult until we were able to explain and measure them. In both cases, the original experimenters demonstrated effects that they could not adequately explain and provided explanations that were shown to be gravely wrong by later researchers who had collected more data and had richer mathematical models. What an act of hubris it would be to think that this process has ceased. I hope to live in a witness the discovery of a new fundamental force of nature, or the acceptance of a grand unified theory of everything. We need to be reminded of the frailty of our models and of the periodic revelation that everything you know is but a special case of larger theory, which happens with this process. We are gradually confirming that reality is more complex and subtle than classical mechanics teaches, and that there are still processes being discovered that extend the range of what we can explain in our reality.
Wow, that's pretty deep. The part that you shared about what happens here matters. I think that is such a key point to the spiritual practice, regardless of a path that someone is on, is does your practice honor that? Does your practice honor the humanity and the divinity of not only yourself, but of the others around you and all sentient beings, like all life in the environment itself? I tend to think of the environment as living scripture, like as the kind of the Bible of the natural world. Like if you weren't given a book, if you weren't given scripture, what would you do? You would look to the earth, you would look to the environment around you, and you would look within you to see how things operate. And if you can look at that deeply enough, I think you can see the models and the theories and the ideas that, you know, like you said, the frailty of our human models, they're pretty frail. Our books, you know, we can have a new documentary out and that can turn something, you know, turn something over that you've believed your whole life. And so if you bank your life on something that doesn't come from within, or something that's not an experience or consciousness, then that can be sand to be standing on. But when we can balance our practice and look at the world around us, kind of metaphysically, and look at the world within us, and take on a spiritual practice that honors life, not just our own life, but all life, then I think we're on the path of awakening. But too often, even in New Thought, I see it, that people will minimize sometimes the human condition or their own experiences by putting an affirmation or a truth in there that almost pulls the rug out from under the compassion and the depth needed to embrace the human condition and to show up really as divine within the human condition. Because when we turn that off and we just go, oh, it's all spiritual. Oh, we're spiritual beings anyway. So it doesn't matter if I have this. It doesn't matter if I saw this. It doesn't matter if this happened. It doesn't matter if they're on this plane or they're off. If we cannot be deeply present to the human condition and human suffering, then I don't know that we're bringing the divine to that.
You just reminded me of this experience I had several years ago now, or probably 20 years ago, of sitting in a discussion group, a Quaker discussion group, but we were talking about all these haughty terms about non-dualism, and somebody was saying something Hindu, which I remember, and this lovely, very old, frail woman, Nancy Hollister, stood up and got very flustered and was having a hard time speaking. She was saying, but it's all God. You're right in the middle of God. And that stuck to me as just such a testament of faith, that we are right in the middle of God. Why should there be anything here that is not holy? That doesn't help you treat all people as your brethren and really look at how does what I do impact them and their self-esteem and their ability to feel like a peer, or practical things as well.
Right.
If you, as soon as you start dividing up, you're lost. You're right in the middle of God, and they are right in the middle of God.
Beautiful. Yes. And any time that we engage in that separation, or kind of bring ourselves apart from compassion, we step out of compassion and out of presence, that is when the space opens up to dehumanize someone else, to think of them as other, to minimize their suffering or their experience or their perception or their perspective, rather than being present and being a presence. And when our consciousness or our minds or our egos, whatever it is, when it goes that way, equality is at risk, because we begin to disconnect. We begin to kind of shut off the parts of ourselves that are humble, the parts of ourselves that we don't have all the answers, the parts of ourselves that really believe the truth that we are not separate beings, that really is an illusion. If I can't tune into you and I can't listen to and hear you, then, in my practice, that I'm not listening to and hearing another part of myself. We're all part of this great allness, and we're not here to be putting ourselves above anyone else.
It's funny that, one of the Quaker tenets is where our books, our teachings admonish us that we're supposed to go through the world responding to that of God in all of creation.
That's where it is.
That's George Fox, who was the founder of the movement, said, I walk across the earth responding to that of God in all creation. And I remember one of the very first times I was involved in a New Thought event was after I met Barbara and we went to Agape Church. And I remember Michael Beckwith saying, you can't make me not love you. You can't make me not look at you as a holy being. And I thought, that guy's the best Quaker I've seen.
Right.
And so again, getting back to this topic of microaggression and I think of it as being justice, right? Since all of our topics fall into either peace or sustainability or justice, I would put this topic under justice. And just the more we're able to think and really immediately in every instant respond to that of God in all creation,
Yeah.
the more it would be just be automatic that we wouldn't use a racial slur or even a stereotype as a joke about different genders, different national origins, different races. Just becomes something you wouldn't do. It becomes automatic. You don't think about it.
Right, right. Because you're beholding everyone around you as an expression of God, as an emanation of God. And I think the element of missing the mark comes when people feel like in their practice, or they inherit a teaching in their practice, that worshiping God or loving God or being dedicated to God or having a godly life has to do with worshiping the invisible. And in fact, what if one were to take that idea and recognize the possibility that everything that is visible is also that, and also a reflection of your practice, of your worship, of your love, of your honoring of what God is? And how can that transform? Because if everyone showed up in their hearts to their greatest ability, the way they feel committed to their own spiritual practice and their God concept, and were to press that God concept out, open it up to include all of creation, to include the Mother Earth, to include every culture, every race, every human, every being, every animal, as expressions of that God. I mean, imagine, that sounds like heaven on earth.
Which is the Church of the Apostles, which is what we're supposed to be creating here.
Amen to that. Stephen, thank you so much for this conscious conversation today. It has been deepening to hear your writings and learn a little bit more about the Quaker path. And I know that our listeners have a lot to chew on from today, to just kind of dive into our own thoughts around our own spiritual practice and expanding that spiritual practice to the next level, whatever is ours to do, but just to trust that inner light, to trust that inner wisdom, and to let the practice continue to unfold and continue to evolve. So thank you for being here with us today.
It was such a joy, Erin. I appreciate it. And Barbara's asking for the website, and it's easy to remember. It's called Heaven Everywhere. So if you just Google Heaven Everywhere or go to heaveneverywhere.com. I heard something once about marketing and said, whenever you pick a name, you're introducing new vocabulary.
There you go.
Then I will call my music publishing company Heaven Everywhere.
I love it. Heaven everywhere. All right. Thank you so much, Stephen. So everyone, we will be back next week with AGNT Speaks. If you want to learn more about AGNT, please visit agnt.today. You can learn more about your leaders. You can learn about our Sunday live streams, our podcasts, and you can learn more about donating and supporting to the work of AGNT and all of the resources available. Thanks for being with us today.